Phantom of Yubel is going to change Yu-Gi-Oh! And here's why. How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to talk about Phantom of Yubel, the Chase secret rare card from Battles of Legend Terminal Revenge, and why the card is so good and how it will change the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Forever. We're going to do a deep dive on the card, including some combos and a discussion about why the card is so good, because we're about to see it everywhere. So if you don't know how to beat the Yubel combos that Phantom of Yubel enables, you'll only have yourself to blame, and we don't want that. So leave a like and subscribe for more, because here's why Phantom of Yubel will change the game. So the current June 2024 competitive format is a mess. The best decks right now are decks like Tenpai Dragon, Voiceless Voice, Runic Stun, and of course Snake Eye and all of its variants. And Yubel was a decent contender, but pretty much rogue for the majority of the format, at least until we got Phantom of Yubel. Its release officially makes Yubel and Unchained Yubel some serious meta contenders. Now, Yubel was already a really interesting deck with some really cool combos it could establish and a unique way it can actually win the game, through burning the opponent with cards like the Yubel monsters and of course Nightmare Pain. Now that game plan is still available, but Phantom of Yubel takes the deck to another level and makes it so much more powerful, especially when going first. But what makes Phantom of Yubel so good? Well, it's a level 9 Dark Fiend fusion monster that requires one Yubel monster and one Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense. It must be special summoned from your extra deck by shuffling the materials from your hand, field, and or graveyard into the deck or extra deck. It can't be used as fusion material, and it can't be destroyed by battle. Also, you take no damage from battles involving this card. But this next effect is the reason why we play the card. When your opponent activates a monster effect, as a quick effect, you contribute this card for cost, and the activated effect becomes your opponent destroys one Yubel monster in their hand, deck, or field. And you can only use this effect of Phantom of Yubel once per turn. So it's an extremely accessible monster negate that also acts as an extender, and any deck that has room for 5 to 6 cards in the main deck, one spot in their extra deck, and that isn't very xenophobic would love to play this engine. And if you want to play the engine, here's what you'll need. Starting off with 3 copies of the field spell Nightmare Throne. This is the card that gets the entire engine online, and because it's a field spell, you'll definitely want to incorporate terraforming as well. But let's be honest, most decks are using terraforming already. You'll also need 1 copy of the Spirit of Yubel and 1 copy of the original Yubel as well, and of course Phantom of Yubel in the extra deck. Nightmare Throne is the 1 card combo that gets the ball rolling. When it's activated, you can take 1 Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense from your deck and either add it to your hand or destroy it. Once per turn, if a face-up Yubel monster you control leaves the field by a card effect, you can add to your hand 1 Yubel monster from your deck, graveyard, or banishment whose original level is 1 higher or lower than one of those monsters, then you can special summon it, ignoring its summoning conditions. And you can only activate 1 Nightmare Throne per turn. There's a reason this card is over $50 a copy right now. It's just that good. But the main effect we're going to be using is the first one, where on activation you can take a Fiend with 0 attack and defense and either add it to hand or destroy it. So here's how the engine actually works. You're going to start by activating Nightmare Throne, and on activation it'll destroy Spirit of Yubel from the deck, which will then trigger the effect of Spirit when destroyed to special a Yubel from hand, deck, or banishment. It'll summon out the OG Yubel from the deck. Then all you have to do is shuffle both the Yubel and the Spirit back into the deck and bring out the Phantom. And just like that, you have an incredibly easy monster negate. Now there's a few things I have to point out about this combo to explain why it's so strong, and the first one is obviously going to be that any deck right now can get a monster negate if it really chooses to do so, as long as it isn't too xenophobic. Now that really isn't the crazy part about this combo. The most important part is that the combo can be done while getting you a negate without playing into Nibiru or even using a normal summon. So any deck that relies heavily on the normal summon can still play this engine in their strategy. Second is that some of the most common hand traps do absolutely nothing against this combo. For example, they can't go for Droll Lockbird against you because you never add from deck to hand with this version of the combo. You can't Ghost Ogre the field spell because the effect to search or destroy a 0/0 Fiend is on activation, meaning it's not already on the field. And Impermanent Veiler may stop Phantom from being able to negate a monster, but they don't do enough unless paired with another hand trap. And Ash and Ghost Bell can't stop the Phantom if it's already established, but they are able to stop you from getting to the Phantom in the first place by negating either the Nightmare Throne or the Spirit of Yubel respectively. But both Ash and Bell are hard once per turns, so using a valuable hand trap like Ash Blossom can be costly against the deck's main combo. And the third reason why it's so good is that there are no actual hard garnets in the strategy. Sure, if you draw your Spirit of Yubel or your original Yubel, the combo isn't going to be as efficient or as effective, but it still is possible. The cards don't actually have to be in the deck to make the combo work. But with all these great things about Phantom of Yubel and the engine, it isn't without its flaws. So hopefully I can help you make a decision if it's worth your while to play this engine in your deck. The first flaw of the engine is obviously going to be the price. Look, let's just get it out of the way right now. As of this moment, Nightmare Throne is sitting at around $50 a copy, and you need 3 of them. The original Yubel is at least $10 a copy for the lowest rarity version, and then we have the Phantom of Yubel pre-selling at over $80 right now. Now, while I do believe that that's going to be a more expensive version than the final selling price for Phantom of Yubel, it still goes to show that just having 5 or 6 cards in your deck itself for this engine is going to run you around $250, which is insane for 5 or 6 cards. Now, we aren't strangers to a really expensive deck or engine when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! For example, just look at the Wanted engine, which just a few months ago was sitting at over $1,000 for the entire Snake Eye deck because of it. But just because it's commonplace doesn't mean it's not something that you have to consider when playing paper Yu-Gi-Oh! Are you going to invest that money into these 5 or 6 cards to play what is potentially going to be one of the better decks in the game? The second potential flaw with this engine is going to be that a lot of decks rely heavily on their own personal field spell, and they may not want to open up with Nightmare Throne for that reason. Most of the time though, when you do open up with Nightmare Throne, you're going to be in a better position because you can establish that monster negate before setting up your own personal field spell, which can be really good. But if it goes the other way around, where you have your own personal field spell first, and you then draw into the Nightmare Throne, it can be a tough decision on whether or not you go for the monster negate, or you go for the own personal field spell to turn on your own engine. For example, does Runic want the monster negate that Phantom of Yubel provides, or do they want to keep Runic Fountain on their side of the field to recur advantage? Third is that, are we sure it's better to play this specific engine than adding in more hand traps into a deck? Don't get me wrong, I think the engine is fantastic and will do a lot of really good things, but it does pretty much nothing when going second other than potentially getting rid of a monster negate or omni negate. For that reason, I can see a world where the Yubel engine becomes more of a side deck staple rather than a mainstay in most main decks, but only time will tell. But at this point, I want to showcase one of the best combos that pure Yubel or Yubel Unchained decks now have access to thanks to Phantom of Yubel. By having this combo, it enables Yubel players to create bigger and better end boards while also playing through more hand traps than they otherwise could before. It's a 1-card combo with Nightmare Throne. What you're going to do is start by activating Nightmare Throne to add Samsara D Lotus from deck to hand, which you'll then normal summon and use the effects attributed and special spirit from the deck. Spirit will set Nightmare Pain directly from your deck to the field. You'll then activate Nightmare Pain, destroying Spirit and adding Gruesome Grave Squirmer. Chainlink 1 will be Nightmare Throne to special a Yubel monster with a level higher or lower than the destroyed Spirit, and Chainlink 2 is Spirit to special a Yubel monster. Spirit specials Yubel, and Throne adds then summons Terror Incarnate. Link both Yubels for Unchained Soul Lord Yama, which adds Sharvara. Then use Gruesome Grave Squirmer to special itself and link it and the Yama for Cross Sheep. Shuffle back in the Yubel and the Terror Incarnate to special summon Phantom to a zone that Cross Sheep points to. This will trigger Cross Sheep to special a level 4 or lower monster from your graveyard. In this case, choose Lotus. Then use Grave Squirmer's effect in the graveyard to banish itself and special Spirit from the graveyard. Activate Sharvara to target and destroy the Spirit and special summon it. Spirit will summon the original Yubel from the deck, and Yama will banish itself to summon back Spirit. Link Sharvara and Lotus for Rage, which will then trigger the Sharvara when sent to graveyard to set either Escape or Chamber from the deck. Then overlay both Yubels for Varudris, which is your Omni Negate. This board has a Monster Negate, an Omni Negate, Rage which can link off with a special summon monster to a zone that Cross Sheep points to, triggering the Cross Sheep to bring back the Samsara D Lotus for another Negate, with follow-up, and 4 cards in hand. It is a crazy combo that this deck now has access to. So yeah, this combo is incredible, and it and Phantom of Yubel are going to help propel Yubel to being one of the top 5 or even top 3 best decks of the format. And it's going to get even better once we get the Infinite Forbidden and the new Fiendsmith cards. And if you don't know what those cards do, don't worry, I'll be making a video on them real soon. But what do you do if you don't want to play the Yubel engine? What can we do to stop it? Well, it really depends on a few factors. The most notable is going to be, are they playing the actual engine itself, and if so, what deck is using the engine? And second, are they playing the full Yubel deck, because it really drastically changes what you're going to be using your interruptions on. For example, in the pure Yubel combo that I showcased earlier, they're actually pretty weak to Droll and Lockbird. And the reason why is because their first action is going to be to use Nightmare Throne to add Samsara D Lotus from deck to hand. If you Droll them here, they can't use Nightmare Throne to add then special summon a Yubel monster, they can't add a card with Nightmare Pain, meaning they can't destroy another card, and they can't even add the Sharvara with the Yama as well, so the combo is pretty weak to it. Dimension Shifter is fine against Yubel decks now that Phantom of Yubel is legal, mostly because Phantom of Yubel cannot shuffle back in cards from the Banish Zone into the deck to summon itself out. It doesn't mean it's impossible to summon out the Phantom, but it is much more difficult now than it was before. Shifter is good enough against both the engine and a pure Yubel deck that if you're already playing a Shifter deck, you're going to want to keep it in for this matchup. But what about Ash Blossom? Well, honestly, it's kind of tough to determine when to use Ash Blossom because it really depends on what variant of Yubel the person is playing. Are they playing just the engine, or are they playing a pure Yubel deck? It really comes down to that decision. For example, if you don't know what they're playing, whether it's the engine or the actual Yubel strategy, I would recommend using the Ash Blossom on the Nightmare Throne, because if they're just playing the engine, you pretty much turn it offline completely. But if you know they're playing a pure Yubel deck, I would go ahead and let them have their add off the effect of Nightmare Throne to get their copy of Samsara D Lotus. What I would do is then use Ash Blossom to negate the effect of Samsara D Lotus when it attributes itself to special a Yubel from the deck. Using Ash Blossom on the Lotus in a pure Yubel deck is a lot more impactful to me than otherwise. But another really impactful hand trap is going to be Infinite Impermanence, which is arguably one of the best hand traps in the game today. And when would I use it on the Yubel matchup? Well, honestly, I wouldn't actually use it as a hand trap. I would use it as a board breaker against none of the Yubel cards. And here's why. Because the Yubel deck has so many ways to take advantage of a monster on the field, even with its effects negated, it doesn't really seem that strong. For example, they can just destroy it with Nightmare Pain to add another one from deck to hand. But we also don't know what ways they have to dodge Infinite Impermanence. For example, they have Gruesome Grave Squirmer and they also have Sharvara. We don't know what they have in their hand, and I would rather not waste a free negate when I could actually use it more impactfully. So yeah, if Imperm is my only hand trap, I will let them go through pretty much their entire combo. They'll get their Varudris, they'll get their Phantom, and they'll get their Soul of Rage with their back row. And then I'll assess which of those cards is most impactful against me and which one is most problematic. I'll then use the Imperm on that card and go from there. Now this won't always work, but we are in an era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where there's so much powerful engine cards in the game today that 2 or 3 interruptions aren't going to be enough to actually stop the deck in its tracks. But that's just me. If you want to use it on a different card, I would recommend potentially using it on the Spirit of Yubel so they can't get access to the Nightmare Pain directly from the deck. If they don't already have it, their combo does kind of stop at least a little bit. But what about board breakers? Well, there are so many amazing board breakers in Yu-Gi-Oh! Today, and one of the best ones is easily Forbidden Droplet. This card is seeing play in so many different strategies because it doesn't target and it can negate a wide range of cards, and Droplet is still very good against the Yubel deck right now. It can negate multiple cards including the Varudris, the Soul of Rage, even the Phantom of Yubel, so you don't have to deal with them as much. Just keep in mind that having access to the Nightmare Throne and the Nightmare Pain, all these powerful Yubel cards, they're easily able to rebuild their board even on your turn. Back row hate like Duster and Lightning Storm are also really strong in this matchup. Getting rid of the Nightmare Throne and the Nightmare Pain, as well as potentially the Escape or even whatever cards might be in their back row, can be really effective at stopping them from rebuilding their board if you get rid of it. And cards like Lava Golem and Sphere Mode are really good 1-for-2 or 1-for-3 forms of removal that don't destroy, which is really nice. The problem is they're much more deck situational on when you would use them and what decks can actually fit them into their own strategy. And Super Poly is a really interesting card in this matchup. Not against the Phantom of Yubel because it can't be used as fusion material, but it's really good against the Varudris and the Soul of Rage, both of which are dark monsters with a different type. So you can take them both and make a Mud Dragon of the Swamp, which can be quite impactful to protect from targeting. It's not a perfect solution, but there really isn't a single perfect solution out there. I mentioned 10 different cards that are really good in the format today, and none of them are a great fit against this strategy. You have to use a combination of them all to really make it worth your while. This engine is going to see play everywhere in so many different decks, whether it's going to be in a deck like Tenpai Dragon, Snake Eye, branded, and so on. It's going to be played in so many different strategies, and that's why I believe it's going to change Yu-Gi-Oh! I think we're getting closer and closer to an era where an easily accessible negate without using a normal summon will become commonplace, and that worries me. But that being said, I'm still super excited for Phantom of Yubel, and I really hope it just shakes up the format a little bit so we see a lot less Snake Eyes. But let me know what you think about Phantom of Yubel down in the comments, and leave a like if you enjoyed the discussion. Subscribe for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos, and check me out on Twitter and join the Discord server, both are linked in the description. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.